So basically, Milady Maker is a collection of 10,000 generative PFP NFTs in a neo-chibi aesthetic, with randomized cosmetics inspired by early 2000s Tokyo street fashion, designed to be fashion-minded and genuinely good social media avatars, and an invitation into their personal aesthetic world. Milady invokes a calming, ethereal, white-hearted angelicism in a blend of Western and Japanese aesthetics. This is a style we've taken to calling neo-chibi, being a contemporary take on the chibi aesthetics once explored by artists like Takashi Murakami, a part of a larger wave of avant-anime art being explored by digital artists such as Mara Bal, Chingshu, and Red and Blue. Milady Maker, as a project, aimed to both explore and evolve the field of PFP NFTs, fixing certain problems identified in earlier designs while approaching the novel space with an experimental ethos. The development of a generative NFT is something that cannot be separated from its financialization. Its future aftermarket is an intimate motivation at every aspect of the design, inseparable from the uneven rarities that drive speculative interest in the art. And the art itself is generated by the process of it being purchased, rendered into, and transferred as a financially valued asset. It's odd to us that this aspect has been rejected and shied away from by generative NFT artists in this space, apparently ashamed of the inherent commercialization of their work. We find this attitude demure and misguided, and one that prevents real exploration of the medium because it ignores half the conceptual interest in a generative project. Large series generative NFT projects do not necessarily need to follow the holy trinity of magic value creation they've inadvertently stumbled into, but they do because it produces genuine markets. Virtual scarcity induced by an artificial total on-chain supply, variable scarcity induced by uneven rarity distributions to create variable scarcity, underpriced no-price discovery sales on an unknown lottery basis. Each of these elements together produce a market where buyers can get in at a low price, have a chance to obtain highly rare NFTs that can be worth more than their purchase, virtual conditions similar to a collectible card game, but innovative and profitable for its transparency and efficiency. This is a novel financial sector that happens to share confluence with artists as the lead directors of what is realistically an investment asset. It is only natural, as artists, we would want to experiment with and explore every element underpinning this medium, which means recognizing the power our design has to control and define a microcosmic financial market. It's an exciting opportunity. The design decisions described in this document can be understood as motivated by this excitement, on one hand, and on the other, by being in a position to intervene as aesthetes. The last motivation driving the decision to make Milady is that it's not just easy for us. It's a lot of fun, and we're addicted to having fun. An interesting, unplanned development in generative NFT projects is buyers using the works as profile pictures on online communities. In retrospect, this makes sense, as the field operates almost entirely by word of mouth from digital networks. Unfortunately, this is not something that most of the earlier generative NFT projects have designed with in mind. Milady's were designed to be great profile pictures from the start, with a higher vertical ratio so that a square crop will be a perfect zoom to convey emotional expressiveness, while still retaining the space to show off full accessories and the scoring overlay. The design of the accessories also intentionally lent high-value rarities to larger, or more distinctly colored pieces, with the intention that a valuable Milady can be recognized as such even as a thumbnail. This is also why an NFT header add-in is planned as the Gen 2 production, to cement our recognition of the unique relationship between generative NFTs and online spaces, perhaps as an early organic structure for Ethereum-based identities. Assets were carefully curated to ensure good outfits, despite being randomly distributed. The chain algorithm was also added to lend the generated works more aesthetic coherency, something that seemed missing in earlier generative NFT projects, which followed more straightforward RNG. A major motivating factor for this design was also the desire for relative value to be intuitive. Without knowing the meta of the Milady market, one can ascertain higher or lower value Miladies at a glance by appraising their drip. This is achieved by understanding the direct relationship between rarity and secondary market value. Distribution rates were decided by first assessing each accessory by its drip, making the highest drip accessories the most rare and thus most valuable. With Milady Maker, we were interested in approaching the generative art space from an angle of sartorialism, by using the Milady as a template for fashion accessorization. The thematic cores were chosen around a loose narrative of throwback Tokyo street fashion, as seemed suited to Milady's fusion neo-chibi aesthetic. Fruits magazine was a primary reference. Fruits was a very influential fashion photo magazine, documenting subcultural street fashion in Tokyo through the late 90s and early 2000s. We chose to place the emphasis in rarity generation on cosmetic accessories, rather than the base racial traits of the avatar, achieved by having even distribution for most facial expressions, hair and race, etc. The initial plan was to have an even distribution of skin tone, pale, peach, brown, and black, with extra rare species like elf, vampire, etc. However, noticing that this was a standard in other humanoid PFP NFT projects, and that it resulted in a racist price floor, with the black-skinned NFTs being valued lower compared to tokens of otherwise the same rarity, see CryptoPunks, Meebits, rarity is a lever we can pull to predictably control future price speculation. So we decided to buck the trend and make black Miladies a rare trait, ensuring a high value for these visually distinct Miladies, and they do simply look good, accentuating the Japanese ganguro aesthetic. We began by defining the 5 cores to be covered under our thematic accessories: Gyaru, Harajuku, Prep, Hypebeast, Lolita. Each of these are distinct, unmistakable style tribes in Tokyo's street fashion scene, but were also chosen for the eclectic style clashing produced by the random generation, resulting in interesting fits that work. Every hat and shirt accessory is defined under one of the 5 cores. An algorithm was introduced to give a slightly higher likelihood for the second of the 2 primary accessories, hat and shirt, to be of the same core as the first, to weight the scale in favor of aesthetic coherency. We gathered up a mood board of inspiration for each core, mainly of street fashion shots, and then had Milady Sonora simply draw up 5 to 10 fits on top of a base Milady template under each core. All the items were prepared on separate layers, so it was trivial to then pull together the complete set of accessories. A curation process was then applied, with the final list of assets based on the random generation that was produced and items that clashed too strongly, looking good only in their own perfect fit, but not in other contexts, crossed with other cores, were thrown out. Next, we individually went through each accessory and gave it a 1 to 5 grade by its drip. A gut feeling. Is it eye-catching? Is it cool? And is it either expensive or take a lot of confidence to pull off? This drip grading was then used to apply the rarity distribution for each accessory, such that the most dripped cosmetics equal most rare equals most valuable Milady. A drip grade is tied to every accessory and trait, but weighted in the final sum according to the visual prominence of the slot. A rare earring is worth less than a rare hat. Finally, a small bonus is given to Miladies whose shirt and hat fit the same core, to honor their coherent fit. The drip grading is designed to accomplish 2 goals. Rarity can be immediately and quickly assessed based on the actual drip of the Milady, without needing to refer to any rarity chart. The highly valued Miladies, which will ultimately come to represent the project in the aftermarket, are rightfully those which look best. A drip rank is applied based on the drip score, ranking Miladies into buckets from SS to S to A to B to C, normal. These ranks are borrowed from standard Japanese video and card game ranking conventions, in spirit with Milady's sartorial citations. The normal rank is the lowest grade one, which we originally had demarcated as D, but during testing our hearts melted for the dripless Miladies at the bottom of the rarity ranking. We realized they held their own charm, simple and sweet, trying their best but not try hard, and couldn't bring ourselves to label them D. Instead, we dropped the rank from their visual scorecard and gave them the trait normal. In doing this, we also hoped to produce an interesting counter-valuation at the bottom of the pool, a speculative market for the most normal Milady, inverse to the valuation of high drip. Since minting has begun, we have seen some speculative action on these lines. The final step in Milady generation is the visual scorecard, comprised of 4 elements: hat core, shirt core, drip grade, drip rank. The design was done in citation to Japanese trading cards, and a fun way to clearly categorize the Milady traits that otherwise define them in the database. Beyond the actual generation of Milady as an NFT collection, we have large plans as the world's favorite avant-net art collective, tasked with saving the internet as a holy jihad, which Milady's sale just seeded. New community tooling and spaces are being developed around the Milady community to bolster it, but Milady as an NFT functionally serves as an identification card for our cult of 10,000, authenticating individuals for new works, new network experiments, new shows, and as elite aesthetes, self-elected as surfers of the new wave.